Well, thank you very much, everyone. I hope everybody is awake after that wonderful lunch and ready to start again. So, as Mark said, my name is Dani Newman, and I'm a maritime archaeologist with the Honor Frost Foundation. And when I was preparing for this lecture, I was reminded of when I was an undergraduate many moons ago, though I don't look like it was many moons ago. And my favorite class was called Great Discoveries. Once a week for 15 minutes, a single historical project was highlighted, and my academic side learned about the development of methodologies and our discipline. My human side just loved the tales of adventure and dreamed of making my own great discoveries. So, in the spirit of this, I invite you all to lean back and listen to a tale of what happened. A tale of what happened when one of the most formidable maritime archaeologists of her day met one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. So our two main characters are Honor Frost and the Lighthouse of Alexandria. Honor Frost was an early pioneer of maritime archaeology. She worked on many key sites in the Eastern Mediterranean from the 1950s onwards, including the sites of Tyre, Byblos, Ugarit, and Cape Caledonia, the last two of which are pictured. The most relevant to this talk is her research on work in Alexandria and the Marsala Punic shipwreck. She is particularly known for her work in identifying that scholars could play a key role in identifying shipwrecks, revealing patterns of trade, and uncovering harbors. The Lighthouse of Alexandria, located on the Mediterranean coast of Egypt, was constructed during the Ptolemaic kingdom of ancient Egypt, during the reign of Ptolemy II. It has been estimated to be at least 100 meters, 330 feet in overall height, and for many centuries was one of the tallest man-made structures in the world. The lighthouse had three phases of construction. Originally, a platform with a Zeus statue and signaling hearth, likely used for ceremonial purposes as opposed to navigation. The Roman phase, which is shown on the coin above, included a signaling hearth and bronze mirrors, which would have reflected the light out towards the open sea. And finally, in the Islamic phase, we have a grand lighthouse on the pilgrimage route from the Western Mediterranean to Mecca, which has given us many of our popular depictions of the site. The lighthouse was severely damaged by three earthquakes between 1956 and 1303 AD and became an abandoned ruin, surviving in part until 1480 when the last of its remnant stones were used to build the citadel of Cape Bay on the site, which still stands. So now we're going to see if we can get a video to play. Down as well, because I think we're gonna deafen people unless we turn the volume down a little bit. We're gonna turn the volume down just a little bit. We're gonna try. Right, a nice soothing video for everyone. Breathe in and breathe out. You are now out of this theater and you are at the bottom of the Mediterranean, looking at this incredible photo mosaic tour that was made by Le Centre d'Études Alexandriennes, the institution currently working on the site. And what I love about this is that it really gives an indication of the scale of the site, which covers nearly 1.6 hectares. A shallow site between 3 to 4 meters, it is composed mostly of architectural blocks as well as fragments and some statuary of hard stone, mostly imported from southern Egypt, some with hieroglyphs. Other finds include sphinxes, statues ranging from small to colossal, columns, and obelisks. And many of these date from the reign of Ramses II, which is the 13th century BCE. Just enjoy a few more seconds. Bliss, absolute bliss. There we go. So this research was born out of a very casual request from my friend and colleague, Dr. Ziad Morsi in Egypt, who asked if I would be willing to visit Southampton to look for materials related to his project on Kamel Abil-Saadat, an Alexandrian diver who spent many years recording the lighthouse site in the late 1950s, early 1960s. Being a typical archaeologist, I did some reading around the subject before I went down, just to satisfy my own interest. And I found several questions posed by Jean-Yves Empereaur and Isabelle, who are the current investigators on the site, in the book In the Footsteps of Honor Frost, which they hoped the archives could answer. The archives in question, Honor Frosts, which are held in the Maritime Archaeology Special Collections at the University of Southampton Library. Frost's archive provides a comprehensive and meticulously collated record of our archaeological work. A prolific letter writer, the archive contains a series of correspondences that Frost maintained with other key figures in the field of underwater archaeology. Due to her practice of keeping drafts or carbon copies of letters sent, there's often both an outgoing correspondence to supplement the letters received. So you basically have both sides of the conversation. It is a treasure trove of information about maritime archaeology, both sites that Frost herself worked on, but also the development of the field and other maritime archaeologists. So to encourage use of the archives, the Honor Frost Foundation Archival Fellowship is awarded annually and aims to raise awareness of the maritime archaeological archives within the archaeological research community, to facilitate new research and to disseminate the research outcomes to academic and non-academic audiences. The award provides up to £5,000 to visit the archives for a period of up to 1 month or the part-time equivalent and create either a scholarly digital output or publication of the work. This is open to anyone to apply for. You can talk to my colleague Lauren and she'll give you all the information, or it's on our website. It quickly became apparent that the story waiting to be told was much bigger than a day or two of research could accomplish. And so I became the second HF Archive Research Fellow. And these are the research questions which make my archive fellowship, which is currently at the midway point. So the top two were set by Empereaur and Ali from In the Footsteps of Honor Frost. And the bottom two, did the field journals tell the same story as the UNESCO report? What halted could have been one of the most exciting maritime archaeology projects in Egypt for 28 years, between 1968 and 1995, are questions of my own. Don't know why I turned that way. It's on about 3 screens in front of me. So what material did I find? Overall, the archives yielded a complete set of Frost's field journals for the mission, decades of letters and correspondences relating to the project dating until the early 2000s, several reports, including the missing provisional report from 1968, a few poor quality photographs, and a very high quality site plan. For the purposes of this research, I've divided the material into 2 phases, the 1968 fieldwork and post-mission of the project, which are the years until the French mission on the site began in the mid-1990s. And they are 2 very different data sets, both in terms of the material associated with them and the timescales they cover. For the field work period, the field journals have proven to be the most invaluable resource, primarily due to Frost's frankness and use of the journals to cover both personal and professional matters. Juxtaposed with descriptions of surveys on a morning dive, you get glorious anecdotes of visiting bookstores during the afternoon rains with the very reluctant head of the Greco-Roman Museum. This trend continues in the post-excavation phase, where her correspondences mix asking after family members with complaints on the bureaucracy involved in working in Egypt and pleas for help in contacting the right person for permits. The material in this phase are mostly letters and faxes, but also things like publications associated with the site with Frost's annotations. What this allows is a complete insight into the joys and the struggles of working as an archaeologist in Egypt during the 1960s and beyond. Although Honor Frost herself was reticent to say her gender played a role in her work, there is a story I'm going to share later on I have time, that suggests that it very much did. As with every good story, there are secondary characters, and these are some of the people that are going to be referenced ahead. So we have Wladimir Nesteroff, who's a geologist from the University of Paris, who was sent by UNESCO and was the co-director of the mission. Joseph Hanna, who was director of the Greco-Roman Museum of Alexandria, the delightfully named Empereaur, diver and surveyor from the Antiquities Department, who was assigned to the mission. Wojciech Kolontaj, a Polish architect and surveyor. Kamel Abil-Saadat, who I spoke of earlier, a diver who rediscovered the site in the early 1960s. And Celine Marco, who is a professor of oceanography at the Alexandria University, and later on in our story becomes a senior UNESCO staff member for marine sciences. And I've included it again because it's one of my favorite photos from the project. Here are Frost, Nesteroff, and Saadat on the shores of Alexandria. So one of the research questions I was most interested in was a comparison between the official and unofficial versions of these events. So I began my research by looking at the two official reports submitted by Honor Frost to UNESCO, the provisional report filed when she was still in Egypt, and a more detailed subsequent report. And the facts are these. The mission ran for 15 days between October 24th to November 8th, with a total of 6 days diving. Honor Frost was to write the archaeological report for the project, and Wladimir Nesteroff was to provide a geological report. They had been invited largely due to pressures by Celine Marco and the Egyptian government because of the decade of work that Kamel Abil-Saadat had done on the site recording the finds, which are detailed in the map that's coming up. And excavations by the Navy in 1962, which had resulted in the raising of several colossal statues, including the two-piece Isis statue pictured. The aim of the UNESCO mission was to identify and assess the site for potential excavation. And that this expedition took place at this time is quite remarkable, given that it was only a year after the 1967 Arab-Israeli War, which caused a heightened military situation and the closing of the Suez Canal until 1978. Using a baseline survey with 2 theodolites and a marine ranging rod, a detailed site plan which listed 20 key finds with photographs was delivered to UNESCO. The report confirmed the remains of a substantial structure, undoubtedly the famed lighthouse, but also potentially the associated sanctuary to Isis, which was known to be at the same location. Frost recommended a full survey of the site and partial excavation, as well as the creation of a museum in situ. She named several salvage companies that could work with the large masonry involved and suggested that both Empereaur and Saadat be contracted with future work. In her report, Frost makes note of 2 issues with excavating the site. November marks the start of the windy season, which makes the weather unfavorable for diving. So the work had to be timed appropriately to that, unlike when the 1968 mission occurred. More concerning, the outflow of the sewer system for Alexandria is directly on the site. Without this being either shut off or extended further out to sea, it would be impossible to excavate safely. So this is a detail of the 1:100 plan that Frost made of the site and an example of some of the site photography that's been found in the archives. Unfortunately, not all the photographs have been included and the quality of them is very poor. This is undoubtedly due to the horrible weather conditions on the site, thanks to the weather, and what Frost described most aptly as a fog of filth. To have created such a detailed site plan, later proven to be absolutely correct when the site was revisited and surveyed in so few dives with such poor water quality is remarkable and made me even more interested to know really how this had been managed. Reading through Honor Frost's field journals and the letters she wrote afterwards, reflecting on those weeks, the story turns remarkable to a little bit like those legendary adventure stories that I so loved in Great Discoveries. Frost returned to her home in London in the autumn of 1968 to discover a telegram from UNESCO asking her to go to Cairo with no explanation provided. She phoned the department in Paris for details, but was told the director was away, but that the UNESCO man in Cairo would tell her what was happening when she arrived. Because of this lack of information, Frost packs only her wetsuit, fins, mask, and snorkel and heads to Egypt. Collecting Nesteroff from Cairo, the pair arrive in Alexandria to find nothing prepared for them but the surfaces of Empereaur and Yosef Hanna at the Greco-Roman Museum. There are no air cylinders, no ability to fill anything to be found. No survey equipment has been arranged, not even measuring tapes. Undeterred, they snorkel the site and Frost draws the finds until the sewers open and the visibility disappears. The following day, Empereaur arrives with an air canister that sadly doesn't work. They continue snorkeling, laying an 18-meter baseline and recording using a piece of string between finds. The water gets progressively worse and Nesteroff begins feeling ill. As Honor notes in remembrances above, this develops into the flu, and he is subsequently sent north to look at the effects of erosion on agricultural land. Thankfully for Frost, her luck is about to turn. I think it was on this evening after diving that I saw a man with masks and fins sitting on the shore. He told me in French that he knew the site well and offered to show me what was there. He was Kamel Abil-Saadat. Reading through, that's what I did. Right. The following day, Frost visits the souk to buy piping to make a lead diving belt she needs for buoyancy control due to the shallow water on the site. In the afternoon, she snorkels with Saadat and discovers that he is a fountain of practical knowledge on the site. Though not an archaeologist by training, he has been encouraged by Céline Marco to record what he's finding. It is ultimately thanks to his local knowledge that she is able to locate many of the finds in such a short period of time. The same day, she discovers that a team of French divers who are working for an oil company are staying at the Cecil Hotel nearby. That evening, she visits them to ask for a loan of dive equipment, and it is a testament to her persuasiveness that in a city with no compressed air available, the next morning, 2 sets of air bottles arrive. That morning, all brings mixed news. Unfortunately, Saadat is unable to be released from his day job because his services have not been formally requested by the Antiquities Department for the mission. Céline Marco visits with Frost in the office of Yosef Hanna and shows her the map that Saadat has made. The map right up there. This convinces Frost that he is essential to the mission. Another break comes when Empereaur introduces her to his friend, Kalontaj Wozak, a surveyor working with the Polish mission who is willing not only to lend two theodolites, but his services when he is free. A survey baseline is finally set up. With bad weather forecast for a week, Frost and Nesteroff head into central Egypt to visit Cairo, Aswan, and Luxor, leaving their contact details with the Greco-Roman Museum and asking them to report on any weather improvements. They arrived back to reports they missed several good days of weather and a visit from the Associated Press, who had been told by the Greco-Roman Museum they not only did not know when, but if the team would return. This, along with the continued lack of request for Saadat's time on the project, led Frost to write a series of frustrated notes in her field journal. Why did the Greco-Roman Museum not contact his employers to request time off for Saadat to assist her? Why were they not put in touch with him immediately? She notes a prejudice against Saadat and that he is not popular with the local heritage bureaucracy. Despite this, on the second day, Saadat manages to dive with her. With the continued help of Kalontaj and Empereaur, they survey the site, record the colossal statue, take stone samples, and manage to photograph key finds, including the Roman numeral for 4, which is in the photograph above. The last dive is recorded on November 8th. So the post-mission phase has a few new characters of note. We have Captain Empereaur Amir Abu Anal Wafa, who was a diver and photographer with the Egyptian Navy, and Dr. G. Mocker, the Undersecretary for Statues, Undersecretary of Statue for Monuments in Egypt. And you can see some of the names referenced throughout the whole talk on this delightful drawing of Kaipe Citadel, which is taken from Frost's field journal at the time. So when the story picks up again in 1971, Frost has written to Dr. Mocker to request permission to publish the findings of this UNESCO survey in IGNA and to begin the process of getting a permit for the site. Her letters go unanswered, and so frustrated, she publishes with only permission from UNESCO in 1975. The tracings above are from that article and again reinforce the really poor quality of the photography. In a June 1975 letter, she notes that her aims for the investigation are to survey in situ, raise significant finds, and create a partial reconstruction of the site. She includes her IGNA article on the site itself. Yes. At this point, she is also corresponding with Captains Wafa and Shafi of the Navy, who are based in Alexandria, have the diving equipment, and be willing to do the diving in their spare time. In December 1976, Captain Wafa writes the Navy team working on the movement of the Philae Temple, pre-construction of the Aswan Dam, could be used. In a reply agreeing that this opportunity seems ideal, Frost includes this wonderful drawing of Wafa diving. Throughout this time, Frost has continued her correspondence with Saadat regarding the site. In 1978, he invites himself to London to spend Christmas, after which she writes to him that she is tired of answering the same questions. He wants to work on the project with no antiquities permit, but just with the okay of the municipal government, and she is unwilling to do so without full permission and the guarantee that the sewers will be turned off or moved. She writes to him that the project has failed, but it is neither of their faults. She will not work without permits, and she cannot associate herself with a project that is raising objects without archaeological investigation. Ultimately, Saadat and the Italian filmmaker and his friend Paolo Carito removed the artifacts with funding from the local government with no archaeological overview in 1978. Frost wishes him luck with the project and hopes for a scientific publication and monument in Alexandria because, in the long run, knowledge counts for more than short-lived publicity, she says. In a May 1984 letter to Celine Marco, now working at UNESCO, she says, "It has been the deepest disappointment for me to have been unable to help survey. It would have been easy to raise international support for such a project from both the archaeological world and the press." In 1995, Frost once again dives the site as part of the survey by Le Centre d'Études Alexandriennes ahead of a concrete wall being built. In an interview for the HFF Oral History Project Sounding, Empereaur recounts how Frost arrived with all her own dive gear, including traveling fins that came in two parts. At 78, she refused to take her tanks off before climbing up the ladder, telling everyone who offered assistance to go away, go away. So the final two stories to share stretches past this timeline a little to the spring of 1988, when Frost sends a series of scathing letters and faxes. She is mad at having been quoted as having written about having emotions at seeing the remains of the lighthouse for the first time, which she refutes ever writing. She is even more irate by the claims in a UNESCO publication the lighthouse was found by an Egyptian archaeologist and his English wife. An apology for both claims was swiftly forthcoming. Although Frost never defined herself as a female archaeologist, she was certainly not immune from some of the misconceptions and stereotypes associated with her gender. So, some questions answered. Halfway through the project, we are closer to answering many of the questions. What roles did Saadat and Nesteroff play in the expedition? As the letter on the right indicates, Saadat undoubtedly saved the mission. Without him taking the advice of Selim Marco to record his finds on the site, pushing for it to be recognized, and then taking the initiative to come down to the beach and talk to Frost, it is doubtful that a site plan would be as complete and that the mission would have been able to cover so much in so little time. The role Nesteroff played is a bit more difficult to understand. His involvement seems to trail off as the expedition continues with less mentions, and certainly there's no further correspondence from him in the archives related to the lighthouse. He was ill with the flu for a good portion, but Frost mentions that he had left to work on another site, which may mean that his involvement was strictly limited to the geology, and once that was done, he was gone. Is there a copy of the unpublished November 10th, 1968 UNESCO report? Yes, there is. And to me, the most valuable thing about the report is the acknowledgement of the work of Empereaur and Saadat on the project, which recognizes the important role they played as brought to light through the archives. It's fair to say that in terms of the actual archaeological reporting, the lengthier final report contains the same material, just expanded. Do the field diaries tell the same story as the UNESCO report? As one might have predicted, the UNESCO reports are the sanitized version of the mission. The field journals fill in the details of her irritation at the bureaucracy of Egypt, the weather, people wasting her time, but also her ingenuity and ability to make contacts, get equipment, and ultimately deliver a report that she hoped would lead to a much larger project. If the reports of the film, her field journals are the behind-the-scenes documentary that shows the real people and situations. Her words transcend time and provide a way for modern audiences to connect with the mission and access the site and material. So what halted what could have been one of the most exciting maritime archaeology projects in Egypt for 28 years? Honor could not get the permits and refused to work without one. In a letter dated March 28, 1973, she mentions that it is very hard to do work in a country at war. The Antiquities Department were just not interested, despite repeated attempts by herself, Selim Marco, and Captain Wafa. She had a complete lack of faith that the local authorities would turn off the sewer discharge of the site. And as she frequently mentions in her letters to Saadat, her work on the Punic shipwreck at Marsala took far longer than she anticipated. It is easy to understand how she would have focused her attentions on projects where permits were more forthcoming, but a loss to maritime archaeology in Egypt that her skills were not more fully used on this site. So, how to tell the story I've just told to the widest audience possible? The aim now is to create a layered piece of engagement with the top layer telling the story, just as I did, for a more general audience, and the deeper layer providing as much access to the research and data that I've used. Right now, the best way I can think of doing this is through a digital timeline, a mock-up of which is right here, and a better version of which was shown in one of yesterday's presentations on the University of Southampton website. The scale of this project means that I will mostly be focusing on the 1968 mission, with the subsequent years presented in a less interactive format. Each event will include a summary, images where possible, and link to the digitization of the related entries and material. If time and my ability to read Frost's handwriting improves, I may try to do a transcript. Critically, though, this will be the first time that the majority of this material, including the UNESCO reports, are presented in a referenceable location. My colleague Ziad and I would love to do a digital version of Frost's site plan with hotspots, similar to what David presented yesterday, but that's likely another phase of the project. I have more trips to the archives, targeting I have more trips to the archive really to arrange a complete scan of the field journals, but also to look for specific materials. Primarily, I'm looking for more photographs, particularly those mentioned in the UNESCO report, which may, fingers crossed, just be misfiled somewhere, and also the full geological report from Nesteroff, so his contributions to the project can be added. Ziad's work on the role of Saadat is ongoing, and we hope in the next year to be able to really piece together both sides of the story, because it's only by looking at the shared perspectives of as many participants in the 1968 UNESCO mission to survey the lighthouse that we will be able to understand those momentous few weeks in the story of one of the ancient wonders of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dani. Beautifully kept to time. Do we have any questions from the room? Anything at all?
Brilliant.
I have to say, seeing this sort of thing, seeing letters, seeing frustrations, makes me wonder what's going to happen in 60 years' time when people are looking at my frustrated emails backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards.
I hope they have experienced similar to mine where it's going to be a treat.
Well, it seems, looking through archives like that to me seems almost like romantic. You're actually getting, you're really feeling like you're honor and getting through parts of that process. But I think in emails in the digital world, I think you're going to lose that to some extent. There's going to be sadness. I don't write letters to people.
I think for me, what I love most about them is that mix of the personal and the professional that are in there, and it's the drawings, it's the little scribbled notes. Delightfully, not in her Alexandria documents, but in some other field notebooks I was going through. There are pressed flowers in the pages and things like that, and there really are. You get the feeling of you're seeing the site through her eyes, and you're understanding these couple of weeks that, you know, were just full of frustration. Imagine you're diving on one of the seven wonders of the ancient world and you see toilet paper floating past. I mean, and you've been invited there and there's no survey equipment. I mean, it's just the sheer frustration that she felt, but also her determination to find a solution. You know, I've heard there's a French dive team nearby. I'm going to go to the bar. I'm going to find them.
Chat them up.
Chat them up.
There was on one of the letters, it had chat him up.
Yeah. There's so it's a remarkable story, and it's a remarkable story of how things both used to be done and how I'm sure they still are done actually to this day.
Well, I wonder actually, from a show of hands in the room, for investigators, field work, people, whether you keep diaries, whether you keep notes in that personal and professional sort of way, thinking that maybe this is going to be in the archives in the future. Anybody want to admit to doing that? Oh, Dobbsy.
Thank you, Dobbs.
Still today.
Not today.
No.
And
Yeah.
Lots of personal archive. So I wouldn't like to dive off, but Colin Martin's got them now, so I don't know what he's going to do with them. And I've got Keith McElroy's that I keep.
Oh.
And yeah.
Sheena?
Where he's rude about me.
He's rude about you.
Gave up on a dive log because there wasn't enough space. So we now have a database of it, and all the notes are in the database.
I start every field season with the best intentions of having a little black book that lists the year's activities. And what I actually find is most of it is about who owes me money.
There's value to that as well.
Well, there's value to
both financial and from an archivist end.
Or who wants what for lunch is one of the other things that I often find in my field note diaries. And I go through them at the end of the season and think, that's no news to no one's going to want that to know that in the archive that Martin Davis wanted ham and cheese.
But I think there is something really to be said about this idea of writing and writing everything about your day, about your experiences, and what I'm hoping is that this presentation, if nothing else, encourages two things: one, for you to create the new archives, and one, for you to use the current archives, because they are available, access is provided, and it's been a delight, really, to be able to spend time and learn more about Honor Frost and this mission.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dani.